Hello, everyone. I'm François Picard. U.S. federal troops deployed to Los Angeles can temporarily detain individuals until law enforcement agents arrive. But the 4,700 National Guard and active duty Marines deployed by the Trump administration don't have the authority to make arrests. That's the clarification of a military spokesperson after a fourth night of anti-deportation protests that turned tense at times, a curfew strictly enforced in downtown LA by local police. Well, for more, let's cross to correspondent Fraser Jackson. Fraser, it's still the situation is expected to, we're seeing a spread rather of these protests across the country. And we've had some questions from lawmakers where you are on Capitol Hill.
Yeah, this is now spreading beyond Los Angeles in the days that have followed since those remarkable images coming out of California. We have now seen a spreading of these protests and of this violence, really, although the center is remaining in LA. They are still spreading to other parts of California, including San Francisco and Santa Ana, just outside of LA, but also up the West Coast in Seattle. There's also been a significant spike in Texas, in Austin, Houston, Dallas. The National Guard is being deployed to San Antonio ahead of planned protests there this Wednesday, a move that the mayor of San Antonio has called unnecessary. He actually said much of this federal administration's work, in my opinion, is being geared towards theater and provocation. That's echoing the sentiments of California Governor Gavin Newsom as well. We're also seeing significant demonstrations over the last couple of days in Chicago, Atlanta, Philly, Boston, New York, and we're expecting more to happen in Raleigh, North Carolina, and Eugene, Oregon as well. So a significant spread of these protests, not just in California, which remains the epicenter, but of course, this is pulling at the very social fabric of the United States, and the what many on the left see as the overreach of the Trump administration is being met with violence and also a lot of peaceful protest on the stages of cities across the entire country.
There's been some strong words from what's become a personal showdown between the U.S. president and the governor of California. Let's listen to Gavin Newsom.
He chose theatrics over public safety. He federalized another 2,000 Guard members. He deployed more than 700 active U.S. Marines. These are the men and women trained for foreign combat, not domestic law enforcement. California may be first, but it clearly will not end here. Other states are next. Democracy is next. Democracy is under assault before our eyes. This moment we have feared has arrived.
So, Fraser Jackson, are people viewing this as a showdown over democracy or personal animus between the president and the governor of California?
Like many things in this country, I think it depends on which side of the political spectrum you stand on. There are many lawmakers, there are many people that I speak to who are seeing this as the White House testing its power, testing the limits of its power, or trying to push against the pre-established norms here in the United States. But many on the right are also saying that the things that are happening in Los Angeles are unacceptable, and that this kind of wanton violence cannot be allowed to stand. We're also seeing that in the response, like I just mentioned, in San Antonio, the National Guard there being deployed by Governor Greg Abbott of Texas, who has long been a supporter of President Trump's. But of course, the difference there is that the governor himself called in the National Guard, something which is normally the way these things are meant to go. But of course, in California, the National Guard has been effectively implemented on the streets of LA without the governor's say so. So there is an obscure statute that Donald Trump is using here. It's not the traditional avenue that the president would normally take to enable these troops to be operating on American soil, the Insurrection Act, for example. He's using a more obscure statute, one which has not really been tested in legal theory. So the worry that many people have here is that these troops are now going to be on the ground among the civilian population, and that fear is even being felt by the chief of the Los Angeles Police Department, who said that the National Guard, who has been sent to LA, has not been sent there to help with protests, but rather to help the ICE, the Immigration and Customs Enforcement agents, to help with their immigration enforcement duties. And now we're hearing just in the last few minutes that these 700 Marines who have been sent there are not actually completed their training yet on de-escalation, and that they are still being trained on the outskirts of LA before they will be deployed onto the streets. No word as to when that will actually end up happening. So a war of words between the governor and the president at the moment, but of course there is very real consequences for this war of words as well on the streets.
Fraser Jackson reporting and couching all of this as an invasion coming from abroad is, many say, the brains behind a fight that Donald Trump has wanted to pick for a long time with California is his deputy chief of staff. More on Stephen Miller, the 39-year-old, many call him the ideologue behind this anti-immigration policy, with Kemi Knight.
Stephen Miller is rarely at the president's side when the cameras are rolling, but he meets with him daily and stands as one of the most influential figures of Donald Trump's inner circle. Serving as deputy chief of staff, the 39-year-old is the architect behind the administration's hardline immigration policies, recently ordering ICE officials to arrest 3,000 people per day and consistently referring to undocumented migrants as criminals.
Think about how corrupt and hateful and evil a system is that allows gangs to come into this country and rape and murder little girls. I'm not just saying that. You've read the stories. It happens every day.
Born in 1985 in Santa Monica, California, Miller gained attention as a provocative conservative voice in high school and college.
Some of you may or may not know who I am.
Before working for then GOP Senator Jeff Sessions. His hardline stance on immigration caught Trump's attention during the 2016 campaign, where he helped craft some of his most famous speeches.
They're bringing drugs, they're bringing crime, they're rapists, and some, I assume, are good people.
As senior policy advisor during Trump's first term, Miller was the driving force behind the travel ban, family separation policies, and the push to build a border wall. Among Trump's aides, Miller is the rare advisor who served all 4 years of the president's first term and returned to serve again this year. Observers believe his staying in power stems from his ability to translate Trump's policy ideas into action. His hardline approach has come into sharp focus this week during the Los Angeles protests, Miller taking to social media calling the demonstrations an organized insurrection.
And for more, let's cross to New York. Ruth Ben-Ghiat is professor of history at New York University, author of the New York Times bestseller, Strongmen, Mussolini to the Present. Thank you for speaking with us here on France 24.
Glad to be here.
Based on the past, how would you characterize Stephen Miller? Is he the ideologue? Is he just a strategist? What role is he playing?
He's an ideologue. I do see him as an ideological fanatic. And he is in my book, which was written during the first Trump administration. He's very important as a kind of theorist of the idea of population engineering based on, getting rid of immigrants. He's consistently echoed right-wing narratives of Putin and Orban and others in Europe. He's very connected to this kind of transnational community, seeing this as a crusade to save white Christian civilization. His grandparents were Holocaust survivors, but he has embraced the cause of white Christian civilization. And so he's been depicting these protests in Los Angeles as a kind of existential fight, and putting this thing that's so dangerous is he's talking about this, like, kind of trying to manufacture this crisis, which is a crisis of the whole nation, which pits an internal enemy, which are criminal, illegal aliens, as he calls it, and Secretary of Defense Hegseth uses the same script, same words, and an external enemy. They're colluding with an external enemy, and that is foreign terrorists and drug cartels, this kind of transnational, shadowy criminal elements. And then he's inserting, this is the new and dangerous part, a third element, which is part of this, which is protesters, which were labeled by President Trump as insurrectionists. So once you start labeling domestic protesters, civilians, as part of this criminal mix, you're in uncharted territory, and that is why there's this recourse to National Guard and active duty Marines.
And how much traction is he getting? We're speaking between the beginning of those riots in Los Angeles and next Saturday, where Donald Trump will be having a military parade on his birthday, while there are no King's Day protests in many cities across the U.S.
Yes, and President Trump doesn't want his birthday parade marred by any protesters. So he's already announced that there'll be any protests will be met with heavy force. And so, many people see this whole thing as a kind of manufacturing a crisis to justify a kind of crackdown. And I see this as when we start to have federalized National Guards and an infantry battalion of Marines that has served in Iraq and Afghanistan. No wonder, as you said in your reportage, they're still training, because they're not used to de-escalation. They're a battalion that fights enemies in the field. And so now they're supposed to be on the streets of Los Angeles. So this is obviously what some see as an authoritarian use of the military, and that's why also it's getting so much attention.
But there are those who say this is theater. They're going to stay at barracks mostly, or just in front of one or two federal buildings. And that perhaps, democracy may be under assault, as the governor of California says, but the United States has a court system, and in the end, there will be checks and balances.
Well, the legal pushback against, in general, this administration, which has been acting with a speed, rapidity that is unknown in actually other early months of other authoritarians, early Putin, first months of Orban. They don't have anything like the speed of the violations of rule of law that are going on. And in fact, we're in a period of testing. Since January 20th, we've had, individual incidents. Each one of them breaks the taboo. We had the arrest of a judge. We had the arrest of a mayor, the mayor of a major city, Newark, New Jersey. And now we have the spectacle of active duty troops who could be on the streets, but are being trained and mobilized. So each one of these things habituates the public. And Donald Trump is a man of images. He's a man of messaging. He understands that you have to condition the public. Each of these is a test. So I also see Los Angeles right now as not only a test of executive power over an insubordinate governor, Gavin Newsom of California, but a test to habituate the public to a different role for the military, which Donald Trump is on record for years saying he would like. A military that's loyal to him, which is why the former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Milley, spoke out, even calling Trump a fascist before the election.
And are we dealing with something akin to fascism, or is this simply an authoritarian bend by one man?
I'm originally a historian of fascism, but I use the word authoritarian because honestly, Donald Trump has always been inspired as much by communist leaders. He's lauded China's system of justice. He's made friends with Kim Jong-un, as well as right-wing authoritarians. And what he wants is the eternal authoritarian dream of boundless power. And all institutions have to be remade according to that mandate, and the military is supposed to be no exception.
And is there a precedent in U.S. history?
I mean, the National Guard was federalized and sent out during the civil rights era. There have been precedents, but we have to see it in context. It's this, as well as the roundups by masked bands of ICE agents, and who the images of this look like what happens in Turkey under Erdogan, an authoritarian leader himself, where you'll be minding your own business, and if you're considered an enemy of the state, masked bands in plain clothes come and stuff you into a van and take you away. And that has been happening even to international students, to all kinds of people, and now these ICE roundups. And this is why people are out protesting. And
the question is, how many of these
those
people are out protesting? Because you talk about those that are energized behind Donald Trump. There are those who are energized against them. You talked earlier about the general population just being made to feel as though this is the new normal. Is Donald Trump succeeding? Is it the new normal?
It's not clear if he's going to succeed. And the fact that protests, that people are actually, despite the crackdowns, people are going out, ordinary people are going out on behalf of the vulnerable. That's the real image that this state doesn't want. They don't want people to see examples of empathy, of kindness, of trying to protect the vulnerable. So it's not clear to me what the end will be. But what we do know is that this mobilization of force with thousands of National Guard, again, calling up Marines who have fought abroad in Iraq and Afghanistan, is completely disproportionate to the threat presented by the protesters. And that's where the accusations of theater and performance come in.
One final question for you, Ruth Ben-Ghiat. When the period of history that you studied, the 1920s, the 1930s, the mass medium of the day was radio. You also had movies in those days to get your message across. In the age of social media, is the political agenda different?
One of the things I found in writing this book that goes over 100 years is that the scripts and the narratives are very similar. Mussolini talked about the need to, crack down against criminals coming over the border. So did Pinochet. That's very important. Chile and the military dictatorship, very important. But social media allows for the circulation of propaganda. And we see that we're in a culture of images now. Think about the importance of TikTok and Instagram. And so Donald Trump is a leader who knows very well from being a reality TV host how important images are in cementing public perceptions and changing those perceptions. And he's been very successful, such as with election denial and having a cult of personality, which I believe he has, using images very effectively. And this is no exception, this episode.
Ruth Ben-Ghiat, so many thanks for joining us from New York City.
A pleasure.